Hi, I'm Benny the Jet Urquidez,
I'm Daniel Inosanto.
and actually, Danny, Danny, I tell you, man, well, where time flies, but going back, going back in the '60s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. In the '60s, like the late '50s, early '60s, judo was probably the biggest thing going
Biggest thing,
on
right.
at the time, right? And then they started bringing in Kempo karate from Ed Parker and so forth. Back in '63, I started there, and then it's what '65 when Bruce came. Bruce was
64,
introduced at the
1964,
internationals, right?
I remember that very well. Well, you had a good ride then. You're actually, you're younger than me, but I've always admired you more than I admired myself. You had really a brilliant career. I mean, you paved the way, particularly in the full contact. I think if it's too bad you weren't born when the UFC came up, because I think you'd be ranked right up there with the tops.
But
You were really doing it in a way.
Actually, I started that back in '73 when it was full contact karate.
Yeah.
Which there was no weight divisions, no rules, everything went. And then in '75, when Muay Thai was into, because my brother Arnold was telling me, and Howard Hansen, they were calling me a world champion. I was saying, how can I be a world champion? I haven't been outside the United States. And they said, you want to fight? I said, yeah, you're going to call me a world champion. So they brought the first Muay Thai fighter from Thai. They brought two Thais.
Right.
This was at the Olympic Auditorium.
I
Remember that?
that.
Honest to God, true, Sensei. I thought, they said, you want to fight Muay Thai? I thought that was his name. I had no idea that was a style. I'd never heard of Muay Thai before.
Well, you were the testing ground for the Americans. We fought the Thais, and I think in America they weren't used to the low line kicking the legs, and
Yeah.
that was something else. And
Well, you know what? I mean, I've been kicked in the legs, and I had, Charlie horse before, but I never had anybody intentionally try to break my legs. And it was, I think, from that point on, my idea of training, when I realized that a lot of the martial arts that I was doing wasn't working. I mean, I was fast, I was quick, but I would hit them, I leave a little bruise on their face, but they were still standing, and I thought, I said, would this really actually work, in the street? If somebody actually attacked me, would I, and then I realized my street fighting, I come from the streets, so I understand that very well. But in the '70s, we had a change. I think because of full contact. What do you think? I mean,
I think so. I remember they had these rules where you had to have so many kicks because people were using more hands, and but I think a lot of people found out too that regular boxing sometimes served them just as well. And when it came down to full contact, people went back to that. I think people looked upon grappling at one time. I think Gene LaBelle proved that grappling can work.
But I think that was back, in the '70s when it was full contact. Then when the Thais came, then it became the word kickboxing was born, because everybody said, "What's full contact karate like? You're boxing and you're using your legs, or you're kicking and you." Finally, the word kickboxing was born, and in '80 I think we had it divided. What do you think about that? The dividing, because the kickboxers saying we're kickboxers, martial arts is nothing, and the martial arts said, yeah, just go in the street, I'll gouge your eyes out, And there was a dividing between the martial arts and the kickboxing. There was like not a rivalry, but we're kickboxers, you're martial artists, and there was a splitting in the '80s. It started to split up, and what do you think about that?
Well, I think it was a natural progression, Then the Thais, when they first came in, they were telling me, look, we can't do our best here because we can only kick and punch. We are not allowed the elbow and the knee, and the clinching with the elbow and knee. So that brought another dimension in, and I think that even raised the elevation more. We became aware that, kickboxing is a little bit different from Muay Thai because of the elbow and knee.
But you know what? Actually in '87 is when actually the State Athletic Commission came in and started to take over the kickboxing because they obviously
Right.
they found that there's a lot of money in this. So they came in and they started setting rules, certain rules that you can do. And then in the late '80s, that's when, that's when the Gracies came in, started challenging everybody, Gene, myself, everybody. They started challenging everybody in the late '80s, and then the '90s is when they started. In the early '90s was when they were having, bringing up the first UFC.
UFC.
That was in the early
I
'90s.
think in the early 90s, it was usually styling and style. And then later on, I think as you got probably in the 2000s, they realized, well, I better have some striking skills, some close quarter elbowing, knee and striking, and I better have takedown skill, and I have to have submission skills. Then I realized it's the full game, and the man has to be trained all the way through, and then not just a puncher. Although you can win just being a puncher and a kicker and using the knees, but I think I think what that taught us that you had to be well-rounded. But you were already there.
Well, since
You were already doing it way back there. And I remember in Hawaii when you fought that guy who was much bigger than you.
But again, back then, there was no rules, no weight division, there's just eliminations. Actually, Friday, I fought 7 times, and then that was Saturday, and then Sunday, I fought 4 times. I ended up fighting Dana Goodson.
Danny Goodson, yeah.
Yeah.
Jim Granwell's student, yeah.
Yeah.
Jim Granwell and I were really, really friends. And then I saw Dana Goodson in Australia because he was one of in Australia he's called sometimes one of the fathers of Muay Thai that brought Muay Thai into Australia.
Right.
But Dana's a big guy. I remember you fighting him. That's amazing. You find way out of your weight class.
I must have lost 2 inches, man. Him elbowing me. And, actually, when he did, he had me up against the rope. When he elbowed me, Sensei, he elbowed me on top of the head, he elbowed me in the shoulders. I did, and I actually picked him up and threw him on the ground because, let me tell you, after those elbows, man, I thought to myself, if I don't do something right now, man, this guy's gonna, I lose 2-3 inches.
Dana's a tough boy. He's tough.
Oh, he was. I have to admit, this is so.
That's one of your better fights, I think, too.
Yeah,
You survived. That's the main thing.
So what have you been doing since it's been a while. So
what I do now is just I'm 79 now, so I'm trying to stay in shape.
That's just a number, right?
So,
You still do. I'm sure you can still do what you were doing back at 30.
So I still train a lot of Muay Thai because I use it for fitness. Train a lot of Cambodian boxing.
Yeah.
I mix the 3 of Burmese boxing, Cambodian boxing, Muay Thai. On the sideline, when somebody's in town, they might teach me box Francais a lot. I kind of like learning. I think there's just so much to learn. I think it's a different game even between Muay Thai and Savate. Savate, because you get to use your shoe, a little bit different game from Muay Thai when you get to use your entire shin. And even though one uses the shoe, that shoe can hurt. I used to call the Savate is like kicking a guy with a hammer, and Muay Thai is like hitting the guy with a baseball bat. But they're all good.
I fought a couple of them in Europe.
I remember that.
I fought a couple of them. I had this one guy that he just thrust my shin, and I looked at him. I said, "Oh, you want to go back to the streets? Okay." I never, until I started fighting them, I started realizing, since when I started, back in those days, going to a third world country, it wasn't, had no problem fighting my opponent, but I never thought about getting after I stopped him, getting out of the ring, going back to the dressing room. And when I went back to the dressing room, my legs were bleeding. People were actually sticking me. I don't know what they were sticking me with. And I didn't realize that I had to get out of there, and I would have to deal with their families or their countrymen. And I never thought about that because a lot of the countries were still under dictatorship.
Yeah.
So back in the 70s, and so I realized that it's more open to every country, and it's all open. After traveling, around the world, it's open to every country, and everybody's accepting everybody in kickboxing and so forth. And especially when I was in Europe, I fought some of those Dutch guys.
Yeah, they're good. The Dutch are very good. Wow. When it comes to Muay Thai, they got to be one of the top.
Yes.
That's where Lucia Riker comes from. That's where Rob Kaman comes from.
Are you kidding me?
they've got some good people there.
Well, you know what? You can never replace the 1980, but, you know, so what do you think where the future holds right now, Sensei?
You know, I think people they're gonna cross-train more. They're not really gonna be concerned so much with the style, pretty much, but I think they're gonna cross-train in many systems, and I think they're gonna train with a grappler. Even grappling can be broken down to, some people are really good at takedowns, but might not be the people to go to for like escaping and submission.
Right.
So even that, I think it's a different game. I think it's gonna be like American football, you know, you have a strength and conditioning coach. He might not even know anything about football, but he's a strength and conditioning coach.
Right.
Because I think conditioning is really, I think, I was taught by Bondo, which is the Burmese artist, you know, there's 6 S's. One S is strength. You need a certain amount of strength to do martial art. The other S is speed. You need a certain amount of speed. And the third S is stamina, or what we now call cardio. And then I think the next S is skill. That's punching skill, kicking skill, elbowing skill, kneeing skill, takedown skill, submission skill, escaping skill. Then even if you have the skill, sometimes you don't have the strategy. So you need strategy. So if you have the skill and strategy, and then I think one of the key things that you got to have, other S, is what I call spirit, of fighting spirit. That's where you came in. See, you definitely had the speed, natural. You definitely had the stamina, right? You definitely had strategy, and you definitely had skill, and you definitely had the fighting spirit. That's why you're what I call the one of the fighters that possess all the different, what I call the 6 S's. You had speed, you had strength, you know, you definitely had, your cardio was good, so you had stamina, you had skill in punching and striking, and then you had strategy, and then you had fighting spirit. Then you had all 6 S's in my opinion. That's my opinion.
It's, I think, Sensei, that over the years that, you know, we started to recognize, but if we were going to tell the audience, and we were going to give them some type of encouragement, or what would you say to them?
I think it's just keep an open mind. I think find a trainer you like if you're a competitor. Find a good trainer that you like, and find a system or a school where you can train. And I think giving back to the people as much. I think a fighter gives back to the people. I think a teacher. So a teacher, I think, is good because it gives back to the community, makes the community stronger. You know, I think for me, martial art, you know, born in Stockton, like, you know, born in the south side of Stockton, things could have gone wrong. I could have been, you know, in juvenile hall, or I could be whatever. So I think martial art for me was a real good turning point. You know, it gave me direction, particularly after I got out of college, and I really enjoyed it. I would never trade my life for anything, because you know, could have done some things differently, but I think I learned so much from the martial arts. To me, it's a vehicle for growth, and I think it's helped my health. You know, at 79, I think it's really helped me, and I don't think if I wasn't practicing martial art, because I see it now, a lot of my friends have already passed away at my age. You know, some I lost when they were 50, some I lost when they were 60, and some of them lost in the 70. You know, so I think it's a good lifestyle. You know, and I hope to have a couple more years left.
You know, I think I've always thought the fountain of youth was about endurance, quick recovery, flexibility. You know, endurance to go the long haul, you know, quick recovery to repeat it, flexibility to have the freedom.
Yeah.
So with that being said, Sensei, you know, I think that all in all, that, you know, the importance of what we talk about is experience, not something we read, something we heard, it's something we've done. Yeah. And really, truly, man, it's great to not only to see, you know, to see that your spirit is, you know, I've always admired, and I always admired your spirit as a warrior. You know, I say, you know, a warrior in the light sees everything. You know, mental warfare, physical warfare, spiritual warfare, character warfare, all have energy. That's what I've always admired about you, and so forth. And you're well, definitely balanced in life.
I hope so.
Yes. So with that being said, you know, It's always Sensei.
Thanks.
Always,
Thank
you
you,
know,
Benny.
always good to see you, and always
Okay.
talk to you, you know, because
Thank you.
you inspire, you know, and not only inspire me, but you inspire many that are watching this.
Thank you.
Uh,
Appreciate it.